The war continues, and this is with the beginning part showing us All Might and those few selected heroes that were designed to basically understand what the plan is, and they're explaining more or less why they need to separate these and why they chose these specific people to fight these specific things. So it's showing us a little more of that briefing room. Well, I'm having a theory that there will be more of these little things, but we'll have to wait and see. Now we go back into the whole Shigaraki issue with Mirako somehow holding her own after getting her ship pushed in. But obviously everyone is confused because Shigaraki should be nullified, and yet he's doing something that is just absurd. Eventually it's revealed it's related to the quirk singularity theory from that doctor that honestly deserves to get punched some more. So with that in mind, he is growing even more fingers. How absurd of an ability. At this point, Shigaraki is the most busted villain in literally the verse. I don't even think Prime All Might can handle this. But that's saying something. Bakugo and Mirako's conversation's funny because they're both pretty much hotheads and very cocky heroes. So it's kind of funny seeing their interaction and Genist kind of coming in between that, because clearly he's the voice of reason in all of this. So despite the whole problem that Deku isn't there, because that was the whole plan of having Deku be there to essentially assist in defeating Shigaraki, clearly everyone knows that they'll have to make do without it. Now, speaking of Deku, in his area, we get to see some cool fight scenes showing off what both the heroes and villains in Ochaku section can do. We do get Deku and Ochaku kind of speaking briefly, because obviously Deku's not supposed to be there. He's supposed to be in the coffin of Shigaraki. So obviously he has to go because they can't have him waste time. And Toga's not going to allow that. And she obviously says those 3 words, which obviously Deku didn't register it at first, because his whole thing is, why is the 4th ability of Danger Sense not working? Which, I mean, it is eventually revealed. The problem with Danger Sense is it only detects malice per se. But what happens when someone who hurts people does it out of genuine love? That's when you have an annoying counter to at least that quirk. And to have Deku get confessed on with Ochaku essentially being there is kind of funny, because I mean, we all know Ochaku likes Deku. So having someone else confess to him first is it's a little funny in a way, because I mean, she never got the chance to confess to him first. So someone beat her to the punch. And of all characters, it had to be Toga. And Deku's mind kind of has to take a moment in order to kind of think on what was said before he finally goes bright red. Now, there is obviously an interesting thing about why Toga likes Deku, and it has to do a lot with how they first met and how Deku oddly looks like her first crush, which, I mean, it's probably never going to come up, but it is something to keep in mind before obviously she kind of goes a little more into wanting to suck the blood out of Deku, which obviously he's still more bamboozled that he has someone that wants him to be her boyfriend, which of course Deku starts mentioning things that he's done with Ochaku, so it's kind of funny because that's how he views a relationship, which is normal, obviously. Toga's, I mean, here's the thing with Toga, I don't think she is evil per se. She is misguided, and because we eventually do see Deku in a way reject her, it sort of puts back a thing about her not being normal, because keep this in mind, her quirk is related to blood. And sometimes people act upon whatever quirk they're given. And because they viewed it as abnormal rather than trying to find an actual way to help her, yeah, this led her down the wrong path because people just were forcing her into something she isn't, which, as we saw in her backstory, that mask they've tried to force her in eventually cracked. So, going back into it, because Deku kind of used the relationship that would be dysfunctional in a sense, him trying to essentially also understand Toga's feelings, since he's trying to use how he wanted to be like All Might, as a way to comprehend her feelings. It just didn't work. Those two are two separate feelings of wanting to be like someone. One is in the more literal sense, and the other one is in a more figurative sense, since Toga quite literally wants to become the people she loves, all the while, in Deku's case, he wants to be like All Might. So we eventually get sad Toga, because, I mean, this is essentially a rejection, and it's just reminding her of every single thing that caused her pain, so she essentially rejects the love for Deku. And because of this, it almost feels like he's able to get Danger Sense back. So, because Deku should not be there and should not be wasting any more time, Ochako comes in and starts fighting Toga. So their match has truly begun. Now, it's interesting how Toga does mention that she is sad and ends up stabbing Ochako in the back. But after doing that, we have Asu essentially managing to land a kick and sending Toga off and basically saying, hey Deku, you need to leave. Love is not literally... This is literally the last place to be speaking about love. We're in the middle of a war. And since Asu and Ochako have had the most amount of time with Toga to deal with, they're the best suited to fight her. And plus, Deku remembers the conversation and shows how much he trusts Ochako. So it is nice seeing these characters kind of showing how much they trust each other, because they've known each other for a year at this point, and they've gone through a lot throughout this year, 1 year, which, in my opinion, it should have been extended to more than a year. But anyway, not the point. Point is that Deku now leaves. He finally leaves. And he does get berated by the second because he is attempting to do something risky. And he's already being criticized because it's like, do you want to damage your equipment or do you just want to hurt yourself right before even the fight? Like, what are you trying to do? Nerf yourself in a battle we don't need to be nerfed in? So with that in mind, obviously Deku kind of has to trust that Bakugo, best genist, and the others are able to hold their own while he tries to catch up with them. We find ourselves in a different section with the man with the most hottest flames, because he is a maniac, Dabi. Having Dabi right where All Might's statue is an interesting thing, because keep this in mind. Dabi was designed to be surpassing All Might. That was what Endeavor wanted. And having him there, now as a villain obviously, is unfortunate, because obviously Dabi really did try to be what his father wanted, but he was deemed a failure. So having him there is pretty much just asking to piss him off. But yeah, he's essentially facing off against Shoto. Shoto questions him like, if you were alive this whole time, why didn't you come back? To which, that is a valid question to ask. Now, there's also the whole thing about him, what he wants. He wants to essentially just destroy everything. More specifically, destroy whatever Endeavor stood for and any that follow him, because he hates Endeavor just that much. And here's, obviously, that's what Shoto would have ended up if he continued hating Endeavor without Deku's help. He would have eventually become that bitter to the point that he might have also turned into a villain. So, this is a reflection. The failure versus the one deemed the perfection. And also, Dabi is pretty pissed that Endeavor's not facing him and that he's sending Shoto to do it. So essentially, this is more fuel to the flame. But yeah, next episode, we get a little more Dabi.